Would everybody rise for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call meeting order. Roll call.
Hey, Mayor Westergaard.
Yes.
Bowler.
Yes.
Stankin.
Yes.
Bolton. Reese.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Public forum, consent agenda. Any additions?
No.
Motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Roll call.
Stankin.
Yes.
Bolton. Reese.
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Okay, we have a building permit for Gary Ertz.
Yes, this has been approved. Eric was out there this weekend. It's good to go.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Moeller.
Yes.
Stankin.
Yes.
Bolton.
Yes.
Reese.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna hear from, is it Andrew and company?
Yep.
On our-
All right.
Is there anywhere particular you'd like me to
It's-
stand?
You're not here so Vicky can see you. Well, the podium's all right.
Okay.
I think she can see you then.
You're like
With
sliding.
the podium.
Great, I can do that for sure. There we go. All right. So, I see that he gave you all management plans, so I'll kind of reference those as I go through things. My name is Andrew Larson. I work for JEO Consulting Group. We are, and this is my teammate, Morgan Langer. She was actually the individual that was in your town this summer and collected the inventory, and we worked on the management plan together. So we are contracted through the Iowa DNR to go to all sorts of different communities like yours throughout the state of Iowa. And so we had the privilege to be in Lakeview this summer. So I'm just going to get started. Sometimes I use a PowerPoint, but I'm just going to kind of go through things, so bear with me. All right, so this is the objectives of the plan. I'll just kind of go over why it's important, why having a tree inventory is important, and then we'll get into some of the meat of the inventory. So first, we want to help you, assist you with managing your urban forest, tell you about the benefits that your trees provide to your city, and help establish a preventative treatment for emerald ash borer, which I'm sure you may be aware of, develop efficient city tree management techniques, and mitigate public safety issues, really identifying those trees that could be hazards to people in your parks or along your streets. So why does it matter? Something I'm sure is probably very important to you is the emerald ash borer related issues that can become pretty costly. Having numerous standing dead trees at one point can be very expensive to remove and just a headache to have, and also very dangerous. And another thing is just healthier urban landscapes promote healthier communities, so healthy, vibrant trees are going to benefit your community in lots of different ways. And sound management practice can increase the environmental benefits, so if you take care of your trees when they're young, when you plant them, you're going to see more benefits, and you're going to have to invest less money into them when they're older and not have to manage them as much. So the data that we collected, Morgan walked up and down all your streets and meandered through your city parks and collected information about each tree. So she did a visual assessment of each tree. She looked at the wood and the leaf health. She collected information about size and species, and additional information specifically for ash trees about emerald ash borer signs and symptoms. And so we used a GPS data collector and used iTreeStreets, which is a software that the Forest Service uses, and that just allows us to kind of quantify the information that we collect. So the first thing that I'll sort of reference is on page 1 of the management plan, and it just kind of is a breakdown of the hard facts from the inventory. So overall, Lakeview's trees provide $290,821 of benefits annually to your community. And I'll break down where that money is coming from. It might seem kind of mysterious, but it'll make sense once I kind of touch on the different things, the different values that trees provide financially. So that was an average of around $240 per tree, which is pretty high comparably throughout the state. I would say that's a pretty good number. And there were over 22 species of trees with around 1,214 city trees total collected in the inventory. So those are all the city trees that are managed by you. The most common tree genre group is maple with 27% of your stand, and ash at 21%, and hackberry at 15%. So that's something that is really important to us when we do an inventory, understanding the makeup of your urban forest. Because, for example, when you have 21% of ash trees and then something like the emerald ash borer comes in, you're looking at losing 21% of all of your trees, which can be pretty devastating to a city, whether you have trees planted along your streets or just in your park, both financially and aesthetically. It's just not great to see a bunch of trees that you have to remove. And so we like to encourage cities to keep their percentages under 20%, but 15% is even better of a specific genre. And 35% of trees need some sort of management, whether that's pruning work or thinning out the canopy. And 204 trees total are recommended for removal. You quite possibly could have already started removing some of those since we did that inventory in the summer of 2020. So keep that in mind as we go through that. So normally I go through I show some pictures of the emerald ash borer signs and symptoms. I'll be sure to send you this presentation so you can share out some of those pictures or the presentation later if you would like. So one important thing, even for your privately owned trees to look at if you have ash trees on your property, is canopy dieback. Starts at the way top of the tree. You'll start to see bare branches, and as an EAB infestation occurs, the canopy, the bulk of the tree starts to thin out, and you'll start to see more and more dead branches moving down further and further down the tree. You can also see bark splitting, so basically just the bark sloughing off the tree. You'll have kind of cracks in the bark, and that's where you have the borer going in and out. And they're eating and moving around inside that tree, and that causes the bark to split and break off. You can also see water sprouts. I'm sure that's something that you've probably seen, maybe not known. They're branches that are growing out of areas in the tree where you wouldn't normally have branches. So a lot of times for ash trees, it's at the base of the tree or on big branches that seem normal, but then they just have these random green shoots growing off of them straight vertically, and that is probably one of the best signs of stress in a tree. They're trying to save their own life by sending out more and more branches to get sunlight and then store nutrients. And so that's kind of like their last breath. So that's one thing to look for. A great sign is D-shaped exit holes. So specifically capital D-shaped holes, that is a trademark of the emerald ash borer. And beneath the bark, like I mentioned, you'll see sort of, I call them squiggles, but they're called galleries where the larvae are moving inside the tree. And so there's little galleries where they're moving, and that's ultimately what ends up kind of suffocating and choking off the tree. Nutrients can't go up and down, and then it dies. And perhaps the best way to know if you have an emerald ash borer infestation is to see an emerald ash borer. They're metallic green in appearance. They don't really look like any other insect we have here in Iowa. They're very hard to mistake. And yeah, so move on here. So next thing I'll touch on is out of page 8, and that is the management needs for your trees. So I'll just kind of briefly go over these. I could really get down in the weeds, but the majority of your city's trees need a crown cleaning. So a crown cleaning is just the removal of several branches throughout the canopy of the tree to sort of thin out the canopy, and that just helps with airflow. And when we have storms like the derecho that came through this summer, or heavy snow events or ice events, when you remove some of the extra branches inside of really dense tree canopies, then there's less likely to be damage and breaking. You're less likely to have like all sorts of branches on the ground if you're removing some of those extra branches that don't need to be in the canopy and sort of lightening the load. So that's probably the biggest need. Next thing is just removal. There's 204 trees, and within the appendix there is a map that shows those trees for recommended removal. And if you are interested in seeing the actual specific locations, we can work with the DNR and you to get those specific locations with the GIS data. So we'd be happy to work with you on that. Crown raising, that's specifically for trees, mostly along streets. So crown raising is really removing branches that are lower on the tree to allow for more clearance under the tree. Sometimes you do that in parks so that people can have benches or play under them. But along streets, those are really important so that you don't have obstruction of view or you're not damaging cars.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
On your tree removal, you say that there's 204 that need to be removed.
Yep.
Are they in clusters, or are they spread out the whole works, or how's that?
Your appendix in the back of the management plan, it has a GIS map that shows exactly where every tree is. That
Okay, I don't have that. They are scattered throughout the city.
Okay. I didn't know if the trees are the same age, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think a majority of them were ash trees, actually. Correct, Morgan?
yeah, I think 139 were ash.
So over half of the trees were ash trees, and those are scattered throughout the city.
Okay.
And the other pattern that I saw was just old silver maple trees. Appeared to be quite a few older silver maple trees that were about the same age, so that very well could be true, that there are some in a similar area.
Just as a side note before we move on,
Yep.
in the campground that is closest to this, I don't recall what it's called, but you have a handful of massive cottonwoods that should really come down soon. If branches fail there, they can be a danger to people camping or cars even, because they're right along the road. So.
And then,
Those trees. There's some pretty big ones. We took a couple down this fall.
Oh, great.
and then the last few items were just tree staking for those young trees, making sure that they have support to grow correctly, and then crown reduction. And crown reduction is just the kind of shrinking the size of the overall canopy. Generally that's done around power lines. Instead of hacking off the entire top of the tree, you can just reduce the overall size and still keep that shape and keep the structural integrity of the tree. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is the annual benefits, and that is on page 5. I apologize for jumping around. So the annual benefits, so they kind of break it down by energy, stormwater, air quality, carbon, and aesthetics. So this is what the software that we use quantifies the value of your trees with. So energy-related costs, those are costs correlated with reduction in energy-related costs. So trees that shade your homes or buildings, therefore you don't have to use as much electricity to cool or air condition your houses, and so then you're saving energy. So that's around $74,000. Stormwater benefits, so your city's trees are intercepting or catching about 4,364,000 gallons of water, and that provides around $118,291 in benefit. So really what that means is just your trees are slowing down the movement of stormwater as it's rainwater as it's falling, and then your stormwater management system isn't going to be inundated, and then you don't need to make repairs all the time. So your trees actually do help your stormwater systems. Next thing is air quality. So this isn't really something you can see, but something definitely related to health. Your city's trees remove 4,742 pounds of air pollution, and that has a net value of around $13,000. Another thing you can't see, but it's definitely good, is your city's trees sequester 860,720 pounds of carbon, and your city's trees store around 18 million pounds of carbon. And that has a value of around $135,000. So that's a pretty incredible value that your trees are just storing that. And then aesthetics, so that's just in the trees provide value, property value, or just overall looks in a town, and that is around $74,793. Any questions about the annual benefits? All right. So now I'll just kind of go over a recap of recommendations. We'll touch on the proposed work schedule and budget, and then I can take any questions. So just kind of recap, there are 204 trees needing removal. 129 of those were ash trees, 129. And then pruning all trees, we really like to recommend that every city sort of get into a rotation for pruning their trees. So you can pick an area in town, do that every 4 or 5 years, and then you pick another section of town, and you just kind of go through that, and then every 4 or 5 years you repeat. And that's just a way to make sure that you're always getting, taking care of those trees and visually assessing them to make sure that there's not any big branches in a campground that could fall and hurt someone that's camping. Let's see. We also want to recommend just continue, increase the plant diversity of the trees that you're planting. Really avoid planting any more maples. You have enough.
But I do want to relay a good news story on that. That when this inventory was done, I don't remember how many years ago, if that was 10 years ago or whatnot, we were at 40% maple.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah.
And we've had a no planting maple policy for lots of years.
So that means it's working, yeah, because it definitely has shrunk then. So I encourage you to continue to incorporate different species using trees like oak, basswood, or linden, excuse me, different trees like that are good in an urban setting. And then now we'll touch on the proposed work schedule. So you can see this on page 15, and I promise that's the last time I'll make you stick around in the plan. So in order to kind of make this all palatable and break down ways that you can best manage your trees, but also saving you money, we like to break down a 6-year work plan. So this takes into account the reported yearly tree budget, which was reported around $12,000. So with that, we incorporated the removal and replacement and care for all of your trees within the next 6 years. So you can see in year 1, we recommended removing at first 15 trees and planting 10 trees, and always incorporating a visual survey of all of your ash trees, just to make sure that there's not any incredibly dangerous or hazardous ash trees. In year 2, looking to remove 7 trees and plant 6 trees, and if you can plant more trees, that's awesome. We usually recommend for every tree you remove, you replace it with 1.2 trees, so like just doing math that way. Obviously you can't plant 1.2 trees, but using that math to calculate how many to replace, always ending up with more than you started with is always a great answer. And in year 2, we also recommended you started with pruning a section of your trees. And in year 3, removing 15 trees and planting 10 trees. And then in year 4, removing 7 trees, planting 6 trees, and doing another pruning rotation. In year 5, removing 15 trees, planting 10 trees, and then in year 6, there are less trees to remove. You're starting to get through that, so removing 5 trees, removing 2 ash trees that might be poor in health. So that means you've started to remove, by year 5, you've removed all of the really hazardous trees. Now you can start working on taking care of those ash trees that need to come down, and pruning another 1/3. So that is the end of the proposed work schedule. So with that, are there any questions? I know I kind of touched on a little bit of everything.
So can you just talk about Emerald Ash Borer and where it is in the state, and I understand that it's been located in the county, and what's up with that?
Yeah, so Emerald Ash Borer, we can assume will most likely be everywhere in the state within the next 5 years, would you say, Morgan?
Yeah, not
If it's
really.
in my opinion, it's probably already in nearly everywhere. It's a major problem, and some people say that you could bet and hope that it just doesn't come to your town, but especially if you have campers, there's people bring in firewood, things like that. There's going to be an extra amount of potential for an infestation to come through, and based off of your experience in town, did the ash trees appear to have signs and symptoms? Yeah.
Yeah, they have borer damage already, so, yeah, I wouldn't say here it's super extensive yet, but I would definitely start prioritizing ash removals.
Is there any kind of grants or anything for this to help small town in Iowa like this to?
Yeah, I think, let me see if there was some resources. One great resource is just using the Iowa DNR Urban Forestry team. There are specific people that work at the Iowa DNR that can help with that. But there are resources, whether that's be through the Trees Forever program or different organizations like that. They help sponsor for either tree replacement or maybe even tree removal. There are resources out there for sure, and if you do want, so I can gather up a few more resources and send those your way. I'd be happy to do
We've been
that.
a Trees Forever community for lots of years, and then we try to do a little planting project every year.
I think there's some grant opportunities listed at the end of this proposal, I thought.
Yeah, I think there's at least a web page or a link that you can use to see a list of resources if
Right.
nothing else.
I have a question. In year 6, you've got remove 5 trees, and then you've got plant 2 ash in poor health.
Yeah, that's a
What does that mean?
That's a mistype, I think.
Oh, I didn't have that on here.
Yeah, that's supposed to be removed
Okay.
to ash.
Yeah, don't plant any ash trees.
Okay, I figured that's probably the case, but then I thought I'd better ask it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good eye.
So when you were, oh, go ahead, Terry.
I was just wondering, do you notice it's, that ash borer is worse in wet or dry weather?
I honestly don't think it matters.
Oh.
They usually start to emerge in, I want to say late May, early June, yearly. And yeah, the weather pattern doesn't really affect them. Yeah, they're just an invasive beetle from Asia that really likes our climate and our trees.
Yeah, but
Send them back.
I wish we could.
yeah, thankfully they are species specific. So once all your ash trees are gone, they'll die out. They won't hop to a new species. Unlike that, I mean, there's a bunch of other species that will move, like from maple to oak to, you know, it'll
Like
take
carpenter
whatever it
ants?
can get. Yeah, right.
We got
So-
a bad problem with that.
Yeah, that's not great. But so
Yeah, once
you
the
take care of
population of
that.
ash trees is down, then there won't be a problem as much.
I cut them down, I know what they look like.
Does really cold weather affect them during the winter? If we have a really cold, does that slow them up any?
Some entomologists I've seen say that some extremely cold winters do like lessen the population, but I mean, even if we had a lot of snow this year, so that sometimes, you know, insulates the larvae and eggs. So it really depends. I mean, we can hope, but can't always guarantee it. So I would generally say don't bet on it. Yeah.
So as you're around inventorying trees in different communities, I mean, is Lakeview a normal community that you would see as you compare us against other folks?
So everything other than the ash, you have a really high population of ash just because you have so many trees. So you have a really high percentage of trees for how small your town is, and that has to do with the amount of parks you have and the campgrounds, so they add to all of that. So your budget doesn't exactly match how high your tree population is. So that's another recommendation that's laid out in this management report as well. I would suggest bumping it up just a little bit until you get all those removals taken care of. But in terms of all your trees other than ash, they're great. Your species diversity is really high for an Iowa community, and your species population is tremendous for an Iowa community. So, yeah, other than ash, you guys are sitting really well,
Okay.
which is awesome.
Is this all the trees in the community, or is this just on city property?
This is only city owned, so right of way and parks.
I think it was a tree of a few years back, say 10 years back, I think that was or 15 even, was a very popular tree to plant. We planted a lot of ash out on the farm, I know that.
Yeah, came in after all the elm disappeared.
Yeah, and they're fast growing generally.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. That and you aren't the only city in the state or even in the Midwest that's struggling with this issue. There are numerous towns struggling with this emerald ash borer issue and just having a high population of ash trees. So again, that's why we recommend lowering the maple species counts and really just limiting the amount that you plant of any specific species. Diversity is always good in the urban forest. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate your here.
Well, thank
All the
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you, Andrew and Morgan. Thank you.
And feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions for implementation of these, the plan, or just the data that we collected. So we'd be happy to.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy your walk around the city when you were looking at the trees?
Yes, this was my favorite city to walk around this summer, believe it or not. And that's not a lie. That's absolutely the truth. So,
We'll come back again.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna talk about shoreline cleanup again.
Yeah, just as the Hometown Pride Group would again like to coordinate a shoreline cleanup, and we're proposing that this would happen on Saturday, April 24th. Would be a morning deal again, where we'd probably gather at 8 o'clock, work for 3 or 4 hours, and then have lunch. We would ask that the city council authorize this for use of city staff and equipment, and that also we'd coordinate for lunch too, and probably buy the pork burgers and stuff for lunch.
You Need a motion on
Yes.
this?
Second,
I'll second it.
roll call.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bowler,
Yes.
Reese,
Yes.
Waltman, Tom.
Yes.
Very good. We'll invite other groups in town to help us.
The more the better. This involves a lot of tree trimming, we could use a lot more help out around the lake.
Okay, we got some proposal for storm sewer in town, that'd be,
Yeah, just that I did get a second proposal. So I had, you see one from Bolton and Mink, got a second proposal from DGR. So we have used DGR exclusively for our electric work for decades. And then they also consulted with us on the concrete street issue. I got a proposal from them, and that was significantly less, total estimated cost $13,500. And you can see in the council memo on page 2 the type of work that they would do. So it's an inventory that takes inventory of all intakes, outfalls, all culverts, manholes, and then pipe information about size and flow direction and the material of pipe.
So basically they'll find our weak spots, is that what you're gonna say?
But the biggest thing that we would get out of this is mapping.
Okay.
The second big thing that we want to work towards is identifying good clean water projects. You know, if there's good opportunities there for us to benefit, especially those outfalls that flow into the lake, that would be another goal. The LPA wants to coordinate with us on this and really take a look at this more like that the city's taking care of our own storm sewer system. And when we work with the LPA, they'd make a financial contribution, and that would be geared more towards the identifying the tiles and all of the items out around the lake that flow into the lake.
So, does that include I know we got that trouble spot out in that field, would they be trying to locate that?
That's a sanitary sewer,
Oh, that's a
so we would not be, no.
So I thought Bill, said we had most of this mapping done for this.
Our maps for storm sewer are really poor.
Oh,
We do not
I
have.
remember him saying something about that.
So that, do they scope it then too, or what is their procedure, I guess?
They physically locate everything, get a GPS location of everything above ground,
Okay.
okay? And then they're getting to where they can get the information out of, say, the intake, because they'll take the size of the pipe in that intake. So there's quite a little bit of work involved with actually being able to get into the structure, not physically get into it, but have access to it so they can get things measured up.
So if there's
But
any
there
help-
are, so Scott, I have a question, so they're going to make a connection, so like they're gonna do everything above ground, but they're going to make the connections about where this, where the outfall is coming from?
Yeah, and, and it is somewhat connect the dots, because you can see where all the intakes and know where all those intakes flow. And then we also, we know where our outlets go. And then we do have several of them, at least 4 of them around town, that they outlet into different locations. So we have some knowledge on this, but it's knowledge that's just, been acquired over the years. You could never go to a map and be able to point at anything for the next generation.
Okay.
Jeff, we could use the maps, couldn't we? It would help.
Yeah, probably help some, I would think.
It can't hurt.
Well, we need to have some idea of where they are if you have new employees come on.
So, how close
That's
is
been
it?
our problem in the past, the people that know retire and then there we are.
True.
So how close is the estimated price?
That's 8 days worth of labor.
And then they're done?
That is what
I mean, it ain't gonna
that's
be
what they estimate to be.
20,000.
It's an hourly cost, but that's the estimate of what they thought it would take.
I mean, it ain't gonna end up 20,000.
Better not.
Well, I just wondered.
Is this, they're confident they can do that in 8 days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was their estimate.
Yeah.
We have a motion to accept DGR.
I'll make the motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
roll call.
Bowler,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Bolden,
Yes.
Reese.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we have an administrator report.
Yeah, hey, let's take a look at that listing on page 4 in your council packet. Because this would be the listing of jobs that are hanging out there yet for Public Works and Electric. You want any comments on that, Jeff, about how you guys put that together?
It's just the stuff that Bill and I went around and that we knew that was hanging out there that or know that's coming up. That's not any of our annual stuff that we do, This is just projects that are out there. It's stuff that we need to kind of prioritize.
Those manholes on Madison, don't we hire that from 10 Point to do them?
Yeah, I think that's who did the last ones.
Yeah,
I know they did the one on High.
and down over here too, they list ones.
These ones that we put, it's just that they're sinking down.
Yep.
We're having the same problem that we've had with the other ones that we fixed.
So what is the water line at number 20? What is the water line to the motel and suites? What is that?
That's the water line that we had trouble with last year, where we just pieced it together.
Okay,
It's a 2-inch line that goes all the way back to Jacobson Seed. There's a 4-inch main there. What we'd like to do is cap that, dig that down, cap off that 2-inch. She doesn't need 2-inch any longer there. and put in a 3/4 inch line that used to feed all the way down to where Cork Seed Shed was, but they'd had trouble with theirs, so they abandoned theirs. And this was several years ago when he first bought the place. They bored across the highway and hooked onto the main on the other side.
Okay. So that area maybe needs to be looked at.
Well, the issue is if it rots out farther down from where we stuck in the plastic, it's just gonna keep going. You're gonna eventually replace it all, so.
Okay, that's good to know.
So really just FYI for you, as far as knowing those things that are out there, it's looks pretty impressive and kind of daunting when you actually take a look at all the list of things that's hanging out there to be done, because there's a lot of things. And with that, we had awarded that contract for underground electric work to TD&I, and they would look at potentially starting here on March 22nd. And they'd have their lead guy come out a couple weeks earlier, walk through the project and get it all staked up. And while they're here, we'll also have them take a look at a couple of our other projects about assisting in Camp Crescent with the project down there, and then also with electric out to Bobby Carroll's. See if they can help us out with that.
So is this school and the bus barn, is that something imminent, or is that down the road, or?
The school, from what Bill was telling me, is probably more in the first part of next year. Sounds like what they're doing is they're gonna leave what they got for power on, and then they want this other put in later on so that they can switch over.
So what
When
they,
they
They're putting a
do the
bigger
new
service in.
building?
Huh? Yeah, they're gonna do the building first. And it sounded like they wanted to do this power after, Bill said late next fall, early spring next year.
that's what I was gonna ask, what he thought.
I haven't personally talked to anybody from up there, but I'm just, what information Bill had for me.
As far as the water pressure up there,
That's the whole end of that town,
yeah. That
of
thing-
town up there.
Some days you pour water out of this bottle caster and it comes out of the faucet. Huh? I'm no kidding, it's bad.
Yeah, the nursing home, the school, all up in that areas.
Yep. Up on that street.
So all of that area is low pressure, is that what you guys are saying?
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And
It
that
really-
just-
If you get a low tower for some reason, they really lose the pressure up there.
Yeah,
So, and to fix that, it's gonna require a loop of some kind, is that correct?
I know before they talked about, hooking on a bigger main to go up Fifth, but you've already redone that street. You've already redone that street that you're surely not gonna tear that new street up for it.
right.
Truthfully, probably should've put a new main in when we did that street.
Right. Even if they didn't get it hooked up, that would have been cheaper.
All right, a couple things yet. So as far as working through the selection process about our utility superintendent, you see the applications that we had. I'm interested in the council's thoughts on really how you'd like to proceed through that. Is it that some of those applicants we'd like to turn around and get and interview them right away, or would you like to continue to accept applications? Would you like to re-advertise?
How long have we been doing it? 3 weeks now?
Yeah, it's been almost a month. Well, how we had advertised it was that the position's open till filled, and that we would have first review of applications after March 1st.
My single opinion is that with the proposals that we just received, if no one withdraws, I think we've got a fairly adequate, selection. And I think there's not enough that we would have a committee. I would think it would be total council.
I'd like to see the entire council do the.
I would too. I think that'd be a good idea.
Yep, I think there's two we ought to talk to.
All right, well, we will work through that and get to a point where we would select folks to interview and then just work with the entire council to do that.
Sound good?
Okay, here's a little bit of good news. The fish barrier, I think the project's coming to an end here shortly. They're going to have final walkthrough on the project on Thursday at 3 o'clock. We purchased a new mower. We had budgeted for one new Toro mower, and we would purchase that one. Low price on this actually comes from Sac City Hardware. So we get the same one that we've had in the past, and Eric really liked that one, and it come from Sac City Hardware. And
That's terrific.
my last thing is that annually, the Historic Preservation Commission has to file their annual report about being a certified local government. And they are asked really what they've done this year. So they have given an update that during May, the commission printed weekly articles and pictures of historic certificate in the local paper, and covered issues pertaining to the municipal building, the old post office, creation of a road around Blackhawk Lake, and the Main Street Christmas tree. And then they also, during Preservation Month, they developed that historical scavenger hunt, and they had some real good success with that. 14 entries on the scavenger hunt. And they designed 2 additional information kiosks, and these are here. We've got them, they just haven't been placed yet. One's at Lake Arrowhead in the George Washington Memorial Forest area, and then one's at Gunshot Hill. And those were both funded in part by a grant from the Sac County. So they continue to work on stuff. I expect that you might hear a project from them about the mineral springs, the wishing well area down there by the West Stone Pier, which that little covered bench that's where the initial mineral springs was located, is really fallen into disrepair. So I know they're taking a good look at that now and seeing what would be involved with the restoration of that.
And the new billboards are there.
Oh, yeah, we're replacing the big city billboards, right? We got new wraps for those. The wraps are here, they're just not up yet, but they are. The contractor has the wraps.
So they plan on putting them up this spring, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
If, when the weather allows, which can be any time now. And
And we're gonna absolutely make sure that the solar's
yes.
lighting is attended to.
Yep, you bet.
That'd be it?
That is it.
Motion to adjourn? Second?
I'll second it.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.